Hip hop has influenced so many things. It's like this genre that screams rebellion and youth. It very much was founded on these core principles of rebelling against the system. It was founded on the streets and most importantly, by black people. It's mad, innit? Now what do we do when people who aren't black take the culture and do their own thing with it? Is it appropriation? And even if it is it entirely a bad thing? And why do we even care in the first place? Let me stop asking questions and let's just talk about it.
It's called Operation Black Steel.
We should call
We're calling it Operation Black Steel. I like that name. We're not changing it.
First, let's get into that. What is culture? Culture is complicated and multifaceted. There's a bunch of grey areas with culture because ultimately, culture is everything. Culture is everything that we as people do. So by that logic, black culture is everything that we as black people do. Naturally, it's impossible for me to define and encompass a race of people within one solidified culture, but that's not the point I'm trying to make, so why are you being difficult? My point is, hip-hop is derivative of black culture, the black struggle. And what was once a thing of the streets became these working class black people speaking on their issues. It was in many ways the voice of Africans fighting racism and oppression.
Afro, if you will.
I had to slide that one in somehow. When I think hip-hop, I think the street, I think going with the flow, I think the little guy dealing with the system and speaking their reality, raw and vulgar. It has origins in New York and really spawned into something much bigger, b-boying, graffiti, beatboxing, what have you. And what do you know, it's all over Samurai Champloo. I referenced this show in my Michiko and Hatchin video and now I'm finally talking about it. Samurai Champloo takes place in the Edo period of Japan and blends seamlessly hip-hop in order to engage a Western audience. But it doesn't stop at the soundtrack. I said it before, but hip-hop is all over this show. There's episodes about beatboxing and graffiti, and the whole show is essentially about the street travels and troubles of the main trio. I think it's cool. I like this show. But what's more important than the fact that it uses hip-hop as a soundtrack is the main character, Mugen, and why it's used. Mugen comes from the Ryukyu Islands. What's the Ryukyu Islands? What's the kingdom? Alright, give me a second. From my understanding, the Ryukyu Islands were a place from the Ryukyu Kingdom. It lasted a couple hundred years with its own sense of history, culture, and languages derivative of the mainland Japanese and other dynasties at the time. Ryukyuan culture faced a large amount of discrimination when they were essentially forced to assimilate themselves into Japanese society. Surprise, surprise, this was illegal, and they even went as far to punish Ryukyuans for trying to maintain their own culture. They set fires and even attacked them for trying to maintain their integrity. Their pride in who they are. It sounds it sounds eerily familiar. Now keep in mind that's my very limited understanding, but the show essentially flips that a little and transformed the Ryukyu Islands into a prison full of criminals. And Mugen is a product of that. He's a product of what the Satsuma domain did to the Ryukyuans. Where he's born, he sees nothing but criminals, crime, and violence. And because of that, Mugen is only going to perpetuate that. He is in every sense of the word a product of his surroundings. Truth be told, I really didn't like Mugen when I first watched his show a bunch of years ago. He had no remorse. He just wanted to attack and slice and nigga, it's time, sometimes you just gotta relax. But in understanding Mugen's backstory, I understood why he was like that. And I know that sounds really self-explanatory, but Mugen is next level different. Like, he will kill anything. He is not afraid to hurt anything. He does what he wants and his history gives context for that. I'm not saying the Ryukyu Islands were made into prison islands. I don't think that's true and I'm not well versed enough in Japanese history to answer that question anyway. But the whole point is that the Ryukyuans were seen as second-class citizens. And because of that, they weren't valued. They had to fend for themselves and only the strong survived. And when someone isn't treated with any semblance of humanity, they're bound to go crazy. And I'll paint the picture really clearly. You are on an island full of criminals where there is nothing. You either fight, cheat, and kill to live, or you die. And you wouldn't really be in that situation if the systems in place supported those people in the first place. Then after refusing to give you help, the same crimes that you have to commit to live to see the next day are used against you. And I ain't gonna front, they're gonna send you to prison. And Mugen has been to prison as evidenced by his blue tattoos. And it only makes sense that he acts the way he does and feels so strongly against authority. Mugen has a line in episode 14 that really speaks to the nature of power.
It's just not fair. It's not fair that they get to be beautiful. Not when everything is so ugly down here.
You can't see a thing from up there. If we were looking down from up there, nobody here'd look bigger than a grain of sand.
I don't think this line is about deity or anything of the sort. It's brief and small, but I think it speaks to how Mugen sees authority. Those who are powerful don't see value in those at the bottom, because just as what we see are beautiful stars shining in the night above, all they see are tiny grains of sand below. The question I guess I have to ask is it the fault of Mugen that he is the way he is? Or is it the fault of the system and the circumstances he was placed in? I think that's something to think about, but regardless of what you have to say to that, The backstory provided for Mugen is strikingly similar to that of black people. Like when black people had their history and culture taken from them. Like when black people had their contributions to society attributed to Europeans and Hamites. Like when black people were left socially and economically disenfranchised and we had to turn to drugs and we had to turn to crime. And because there's poverty, there will be crime. And then they called us criminals and locked us up on minor charges so we can be slaves to a prison system instead. And then we can get out on good behavior and have no feasible way to make money because of that prior conviction. I'm not saying it's the same, but it is incredibly similar. And that's not saying that there aren't black criminals that aren't just as ruthless and uncompassionate as Mugen, but again, is that the fault of the people or the circumstances that the system creates? Again, things to think about. You know, in a society where immigrants and people of color are marginalized, sharing cultural practices is great, but the issue is when things are taken and commodified for profit with no credit given to the original group. Considering how xenophobic Japanese culture is known to be, I mean, it ain't a good look. But I think the use of hip hop extends far beyond the novelty of we're using it solely for profit, because it's so ingrained into Samurai Champloo's DNA that I genuinely can't imagine this series without it. Even ignoring the parallels to Mugen's story with the black struggle, you know, it's in Mugen's fighting style, you know, b-boying, essentially making things up as he goes along. It's kind of like freestyling. He didn't have a teacher, he just goes with the flow and does it. He takes what he sees and learns and just goes with it. B-boying is an extension of hip-hop. Even the fact that the samurais in the first place, I mean, you might ain't heard about Wu-Tang. I mean, hip-hop has always inherently had this really nerdy side to it. I mean, MF Doom is just straight a comic, but that's something else entirely. And while I'm not against Samurai Champloo using hip-hop in its soundtrack, but because of the story told, the characters and how it does it, I do think the audience can get a bit annoying. I should clarify that I don't judge anyone for how they're exposed to the medium. I believe that everyone has different entries into hip-hop and rap, and that can evolve into different branches with time. You know, yeah, you might tell me your favorite rapper is Logic, but you know, while you gulp down that monster drink, you know, maybe someday that might evolve into J. Cole. That's a really bad example. My point is, everybody starts from somewhere, but what really gets under my skin is people going, where can I find more music like this? The Ryuku story is so moving. Shame real life can't have stories like this. I wish more rap was like this instead of that ghetto trash. Like, when I hear stuff like that, I mean, like, you know, black people have been doing this for a minute, and just because you got a playlist full of nujabes and lo-fi beats, you think you know things. They just come off it, man. I hate it. And fun fact, that's why I don't really like playing nujabes in my videos. I don't really want to perpetuate that. Cultural appropriation is a matter of power and perspective, and it kind of depends on how you view the concept of art as a whole. Can you own an art style? And are people not allowed to be inspired by your art style? It really depends. Cultural appropriation is about taking a lifestyle and using it for profit. And ultimately, I mean, to be fair, that's what Samurai Champloo ultimately did. It wanted to appeal to Westerners. Really, I think the beef of cultural appropriation stems from how audiences receive it and whether or not they understand the origins. Samurai Champloo feels sincere because everything about hip-hop is in its DNA and it's used as a conduit to tell a tragic story about the Ryukyu Islands and loosely explore this idea of how damaged communities can damage people. I think we'd be singing a different tune if, say, this show was about white women selling tea. Playing hip-hop in that circumstance doesn't make any sense, and it would feel like those in power using the culture solely for profit. For me, and I can't speak for everyone, it's all about how it's understood. How much do you understand the culture you're trying to integrate? And what purpose does it serve in the story you're trying to tell beyond profiting off the mainstream appeal? What is your personal stake? And I think these are the questions that should be asked. Ignoring the point about appropriation though, I genuinely think Samurai Champloo, just like a lot of Watanabe's works, is amazing. He's my favourite Japanese director, and for good reason. He knows how to make something tasteful with a distinct style. And these are just small things at this point, but I really like Jin's episode where he falls in love with the woman about to kill herself. It's obvious, but I really like the episode with Mugen's backstory. I like Mugen's women troubles. I don't lie, I think I just like Mugen. Yeah, he's cool. And there's also this episode where he got high. That was great. He's not like Spike Spiegel cool, but he has his own charm and his brashness. I don't know. I think Fu was alright. When the right character is on screen, she can bounce off them really well. But Mugen and Jin basically just steal the show. Samurai Champloo is a cool show and I think you should watch it. I've never viewed hip hop as something that only black people can do. I can understand why we're so obsessed with ownership. Trust me, it makes sense given our stolen history, but hip hop is ultimately a vessel for the disenfranchised to speak on their struggles. And while black people have probably suffered the most, I don't think we should then deprive those with similar experiences of the ability to speak their reality. As long as it's sincere and honest and rooted in the core principles of hip hop, then I think people will appreciate it. And if it isn't, well, we won't. I ain't lying. Don't leave this video thinking, yeah, I'm gonna rap about the kids that bully me and get mad when nobody wants to hear that. If you're gonna take a culture, be good. Be damn good, and you better give credit. Something Samurai Champloo doesn't do, which is why I still think it falls under some levels of appropriation. There's no credit or acknowledgement given to the origins of hip-hop. Then again, it's kind of ridiculous for me to expect the credits to roll, and I'm here in San Francisco, and I see at the end, by the way, hip-hop was made by black people. So it just, I don't know. But maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe as long as it's respectful and good, again, people won't care. Everybody draws the line at a different place, but to me, Samurai Champloo is hard, and I like it, and I think you will too. Anyone can just slap hip-hop tracks on any old show and call it a night, but the care and attention to detail is why it works. It's not done for profit. It's done out of love for hip-hop. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Operation Black Steel. Stay real.